You brush twice a day. You floss. You even use mouthwash. And yet, every single morning when you spit into the sink, there's blood. Not a little. Enough to make you stop and stare. And here's what makes it worse. You're doing everything right. You're not the person who ignores their teeth. You're the person who actually tries. And it's still happening. So what if the problem isn't what you're doing, but what nobody ever told you? Most people assume bleeding gums mean you're brushing too hard. Or not hard enough. Maybe you need a softer toothbrush. Maybe you need to floss more consistently. But here's the thing. Researchers have been looking at this for years, and what they keep finding is something that almost no dentist mentions during a regular checkup. Your mouth is home to over 700 species of bacteria. Some of them are supposed to be there. They help break down food, protect your enamel, even fight off harmful pathogens. But when that balance is disrupted, and it gets disrupted more easily than you'd think, the bad bacteria start to take over. They form a thin layer under your gum line that your toothbrush simply cannot reach. Not because you're brushing wrong, because it's physically inaccessible. And when that layer sits there long enough, your body sends an immune response. Inflammation. And inflammation in your gums shows up as one thing: bleeding. So you're not bleeding because you're neglecting your teeth. You're bleeding because your oral microbiome, the ecosystem of bacteria living in your mouth, is out of balance. Now here's where it gets interesting. Because once you understand that the root issue is bacterial imbalance, the whole approach to fixing it changes completely. Think about your gut for a second. Most people know by now that your gut has good bacteria and bad bacteria, and that keeping that balance matters for digestion, immunity, even mood. There's an entire industry built around that idea. Probiotics, fermented foods, prebiotics. But almost nobody talks about the oral microbiome the same way. And the mouth is actually where your digestive system begins. It's the first environment your food touches. And it's the first place that balance can break down. Scientists have started paying serious attention to this. There are now studies looking at how specific strains of beneficial bacteria, the kind that naturally occur in a healthy mouth, can actually crowd out the harmful ones. Not by killing them with chemicals, by outcompeting them. And when that happens, inflammation goes down. The immune response calms. The bleeding stops. I want to pause here for a second, because I know some of you are watching this and thinking, okay, so what do I actually do with this information? And I want to be honest with you. I'm not here to sell you a miracle cure. I don't believe in those. What I do believe in is understanding what's actually happening in your body and then making informed decisions. So, there are lifestyle changes that genuinely help. Reducing sugar intake directly feeds harmful bacteria. Staying hydrated keeps saliva production up, and saliva is actually your mouth's natural defense system. Certain foods, yogurt, kefir, some leafy greens, support a healthier oral environment. And there's one more thing I'll mention, not as a definitive answer, but as something worth knowing about. There's a supplement called ProDentim. It was specifically formulated with strains of beneficial oral bacteria, not gut probiotics, oral ones, along with a handful of natural compounds that support gum tissue. I'm not going to tell you it works for everyone, because I can't promise that. But the concept behind it is grounded in the same science we just talked about. If the problem is bacterial imbalance and probiotics can restore that balance, then the logic holds. If you're curious, I'll leave the link in the description. Take a look, read what it's about, and decide for yourself. No pressure. Let's keep going, because there's another piece of this that almost nobody talks about. Stress. I know that sounds completely unrelated, but hear me out. When your body is under chronic stress, it produces elevated cortisol. And elevated cortisol suppresses your immune system, including the immune response in your gums, which means the same bacteria that your body would normally keep in check start gaining ground. This is why so many people notice their gum problems get worse during high-stress periods. Exam season, job changes, difficult personal situations. It's not a coincidence, it's biology. And it connects to sleep too. Your mouth does a significant amount of repair and bacterial regulation during sleep. Saliva production drops when you sleep with your mouth open or when you're chronically sleep deprived, which again shifts that bacterial balance. So if you've been dealing with bleeding gums for a while and you've ruled out technique, Maybe the more useful questions to ask yourself are, how's my stress level lately? Am I sleeping well? What does my diet actually look like, beyond the obvious stuff? Here's the honest summary of everything we've covered. Bleeding gums, even with good hygiene, are almost always a sign of inflammation. That inflammation is almost always triggered by bacterial imbalance, and that imbalance is influenced by far more than your brushing routine. Your diet, your stress levels, your sleep, and the health of your oral microbiome all play a role. The fix isn't necessarily a new toothbrush. It's understanding your mouth as an ecosystem and giving that ecosystem what it actually needs to stay balanced. Some people address that through diet changes alone, some through better sleep habits, some look for additional support, like the supplement I mentioned earlier, which again, you'll find linked below if you want to explore it. But the most important thing is that you stop blaming yourself for doing something wrong. Because if you've been consistent with your hygiene and it's still happening, the problem was never your effort. It was always the information. If this was useful, consider sharing it with someone who's been dealing with the same thing. Most people spend years assuming they just have bad teeth. Sometimes all it takes is a different explanation. See you in the next one.